Alright, welcome back. Dave here, Stance Everything. We're in the garage where we always are, and we're going to pick up where the last video left off, and I'm going to get that running board to fit that Fender a lot better. Getting right into it, you can see that I got a patch panel from Bill's Truck Stop that is supposed to go on the bottom of this Fender. Now, it doesn't fit super great. The contour at the bottom is sort of wrong, and it's a little bit weird. If you look at it, this piece here is actually a separate piece. So it's like got a little patch welded in there for a bigger patch panel. Very strange. I'm not really sure why it's like that. They say this is an American made panel, so maybe that has something to do with it. It doesn't look like the welds are porous or anything, but it's definitely pretty strange. So I'm going to put this on the bench for now, and we're going to take a look. Sorry. And we're going to take a look at what's going on here. So if you recall in the last video, I said that this kind of bends under and it needs to be the profile is just kind of wrong. And if I remember correctly, I welded in this corner, and I might have even put a patch here, and that's probably why it sucks, if I'm going to be completely honest. So I'm going to smash this around with a hammer a little bit, see if I can get it closer to fitting on this, which, if I do put this piece as wonky as it is, that lines up a lot nicer, and I can kind of clean up this corner and get everything nice. So I do have this to fall back on if messing with this doesn't work. So I'm going to put the camera somewhere where you can all see me play around a little bit. I'm going to go look on the inside and try and remember what I got going on. And then I might just end up using this piece anyway, but we shall see. Back. This is another day. I'm not even gonna lie. Last night went terrible. Well, that patch panel didn't work, and obviously I figured that out after I cut out the metal that was already there. It's just the radius is wrong. We're gonna be able to use some pieces of it, but it's just wrong. So let's take a look at where I'm at now. Obviously I've taken off this whole bottom here, and I realized that it was just not in great shape. I've since hammered and dollied this to make it a little bit straighter. I do have a little bit of work to do right there. There is a bit of a dip. And then I'm going to put this piece of metal in. It's the same grade as the piece of metal that I was working with. This masking tape is actually a tracing of what I cut out with a little bit extra to take care of this radius here. I'm going to put this piece right there where you see it. I'm going to tack it in place first and then bend it around with a few more tacks until we get to the end. And then honestly, I'll probably tack the end while it's here on the truck and then cut it up and finesse it over there on the bench. Then once we have this piece in, I'll work on the bottom flange on the bench as well. I do not have a shrinker stretcher, so I can't make that flange in one piece, unfortunately. But I really do want to get this piece in so we can start lining up the fender, and then I can monkey with the bottom piece over there, because this is going to have to come off anyway for me to sort of get this finessed. And then we will get into adjusting these steps to fit. And I think the method I'm going to use is the same method I used last time, where I'm going to enlarge these holes so that we've got some adjustment in there. Use a larger washer on the bottom side so that it's still tight. There's a lot of meat in here, so we can move it backwards and forwards. It doesn't need to go side to side too much, just needs to be opened up a little bit. I'll actually tape myself doing this time so you can see what I'm doing. But first, let's clean this up, hammer and dolly it a little bit, and then get this tacked in and start working our way that way. the camera got knocked over for a little bit, so I missed a little bit. But to say this was a fiasco would be putting it mildly. Getting this contour, I probably should have started here and moved over there. But getting this area here, this radius, turned out to be pretty difficult. You can actually see that I've got a bunch of clamps everywhere. I've actually got the running board clamped to this now, just so I had something to hold the shape. So we're going to find out together if this all holds once I release these C-clamps. Don't worry, I am on the bench, going to spend a lot of time cleaning this up. There is too much of a gap here and there, so that's going to take some special tricks. Sorry for the there, but it is what it is. Alright, that seemed to hold. Now the important one is the one that's holding this fender to the running board. Did it hold its shape? It's like we have something we can work with now. The radius is much closer. I can clean up, I haven't even cleaned up the running board yet, so I'm basically going to, this is all going to mate to each other. It's probably never going to fit another truck, but we don't really have to worry about that. So my camera is about dead now. I might clean up a little bit tonight, maybe open up those holes a bit, and then we're going to call this one a wrap. But I'm actually pretty happy with the fact that this held after everything that I did here. And yeah, we're going to do a bunch of cleanup on the bench, so don't you worry. That's not going to look nearly as ugly as it does right now. All right, I don't even know what day this is on this video. After I shot that video of me removing spot welds, which hopefully you saw, I came out to the garage to pick up where I left off, and I was out of welding gas. Got the welding gas, came out the next night in the garage, cranked up my grinder, and it broke inside the transmission. No bueno. So I was a little bit discouraged at 2 nights in a row coming up Snake Eyes when I had a lot of stuff planned to do and a lot of time to do it, because I've also been really busy. But that all doesn't matter because I am finally back out in the garage. I've got a new grinder, which is that guy right there. Seems to be working pretty solid. And I've got the mounts to my running board finally mounted to the running board mounts. And now my next step is going to be placing this running board on top of these mounts so that it lines up with that fender, and then I can go through and mark everything. So all of these mounts are in the middle of the slots in the running board mount right now to give me as much adjustment as possible. If anything changes down the road, say I put my fenders back in or widen them out a little bit, I can slot it a little bit and hopefully not have to go through this mess again. So let's put this on the mounts and then line everything up, and hopefully we can at least get these spot welded in today, because I did burn a lot of time earlier getting the running board cleaned up and all sorts of stuff like that. Alright, so I'm back and the mounts are attached to the running board loosely, 2 tacks, and then it is also attached to the fender, so let me show you what's going on. There is clamps here holding this fender shape, and then this all butts up here, and there is a bolt through there. That running board looks pretty decent, all said and done. Lines up with the bottom of the rocker, just like the other side, which is what I wanted. I didn't want you seeing too much of the running board sticking out. So I'm pretty happy with how all this works, but what I do need to do, I have to make this fender kind of hold this shape. And right now the way I'm doing it is clamping it to the fender, which obviously isn't going to work. Now this does mount with 1 hole here and then 2 down here. And I don't have those 2 holes drilled, but I have drawn them out. So I think my best course of action is actually going to be to take this off again, drill those 2 holes, bolt it together, and then try and put a flange on the bottom of this so that it holds its shape. Once I have this apart, drilled, we'll come back and I'll show you what I'm going to do, and then hopefully I can actually achieve this tonight, and then I can take this fender off, weld it all back up, put it back together, prime it, put it all back together, and then we can kind of keep pushing forward on getting this all sorted out. Alright, to be honest, I don't know where I was with the last cut. It's been many days for a variety of reasons, but I do have some good progress to show you. Now, wheels on, fillers on, fender is mounted, I can put some weight on it, everything is more or less happy. I do have to put some more welds all along to get that tight, so I wouldn't really fully stand on it yet, but I am really happy with how this looks, that looks. The gap here, yep, I can put a gasket in there, close that up a little bit. So my next step is going to be take this wheel back off. The reason I had the wheel on is because I'm not going to lie to you, there is some tension in here holding these 2 things together, which does kind of change the shape of the fender a little bit. And I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't too drastic, and honestly it isn't. You can see that it's really tight in there, and when I do go back and
determine the exact width of the fender. I'll make sure it's the same both sides. I'm just going to make sure that I can roll with the truck all the way up. Yes, this is actually all the way up. When the wheel goes up, this problem actually does get a lot less. So I'm not super worried about all the way up, but I do want to make sure that it's all cool. I am going to take the wheel off. I'm going to work on this radius just a little bit more. I know I have to hammer it and do a little bit of cutting. Tack it here, take this fender off, put it on the bench, then we're going to weld it up. Hopefully today we can get this all welded up and ground down, and then I can actually put some primer on it. I'm not going to go crazy finishing it out because I know once I do have to hack up this fender, I might as well do all my body work at that time instead of right now. I'm going to attach the camera to the end of my bench there, take the wheel off and do a little bit of work, and then we'll catch up on the bench.
Fender is off now, and I have it on the bench in the spot that I'm probably going to weld it in. I might move it slightly, but it's pretty solid right now. Now, admittedly, I did go through and add a few more tacks and play with it hammer and dolly, so we're looking pretty good right now. There is a slight kink here that I'm going to try and hammer and dolly out a little bit more once it's sort of welded in. It's not the worst though, considering how I bent this, and up here is pretty good. And honestly, right down here where the worst of it is, the running board comes right there, so you're not going to see it too badly. And for a patch panel that I made myself and did bend over there, I will show you that later in the video. I'm pretty happy with it. So tonight, just because it is coming up on about 12:30, I am going to go through and tack all of this, fill in all the gaps, worry about this hole here. I've got a copper backing plate that I can use to do that. Once I have this welded and ground down and coated, I'm going to put it back on the side of the truck, obviously, and then the running board's going to come off, and I'm going to finish welding the new position of the mounts on. There's just a couple of spot welds in right now, and I just want to go through it so that if, say, when it is getting exhaust work, someone does step on that running board, it doesn't pop off. And then we can finally call this video done. So let's put this camera somewhere where you can see me weld through this, and then we'll come back tomorrow, grind it all down, put some paint on it, and then hopefully get it back on this. And then we can finally get this video out the door. It's taking me way too long. I'm not gonna lie, I cut out a lot of grinding time-lapse footage because you have seen me grind and sand a ton before, but I did blend in the bottom of this patch. So I did go through and blend this. It looks all right. I'm gonna hit it with red oxide primer because I am gonna go back and bodywork this. I am definitely gonna have to fiberglass fill over these welds because there are a couple of pinholes, but for the sake of getting this back together and knowing that I am going to be cutting this, widening it, doing a bunch of body work, this is fine for now, and we're just going to keep moving and then come back and revisit this bottom section here. But I do think that it's not going to take nearly as much filler as it did before, because really there's one seam that kind of goes across there, but all here is one piece, where before I had a bunch of stuff going on. So I'm hoping that it's not going to take too long to do. What I'm going to do next is prime the inside. I've got just a little bit of seam sealer left, so I'm going to actually tape around here just so the seam sealer doesn't pop through, prime the inside, seam seal it, hit this with red oxide, and then finally put it back on, and we can push to get this thing back on the ground after I put a few more tacks in the running board and a bunch of other stuff, minor things to get this thing back on the ground so that we can go get an exhaust as soon as possible. This isn't final by any means. You can see that there are a couple of pinholes in areas that I do need to address, but because, as I've said before, I am going to be widening this fender, which means I'm going to have a seam at the very least around here somewhere. I'm not going to really worry about the body work yet. Once I do cut that and widen the fender and start the body work, I will be putting some fiberglass filler over the weld seams here on the outside, treating the backside properly, and then going through all that. This is just so when the truck goes to Mike's, the raw metal does not rust, and honestly, it looks pretty good when it's sitting there. Mike has his own channel now, and I'm hoping that the truck does appear in there when it does go over there, so obviously I don't want to get caught slipping, and I want this thing to look pretty good. So, last thing left to do is to put this all back together. Alright, time lapse over, and we can finally wrap up this video with some really good progress, even though it took way longer than expected. Let's start on the inside of the fender, and I can show you what I've got going on.
Inside the fender, you can see that I've just hit it with some red oxide primer and some seam sealer, just to make sure that nothing nasty is going to happen back here while the truck is off to get its exhaust done. I am going to end up undercoating everything back here and probably cleaning up the seam sealer just a little bit more, but for now this is going to work perfect. If you're wondering why I didn't continue the flange down through there, that side of the fender is actually going to be replaced when I do the widening of the fender, so I'm not too worried about that just yet. We will clean that up once I do that inside of the fender. And to widen the fender, I do have a factory piece from somebody else that I can use from a replacement fender for the inside flange. So that should be happening once the truck is back from exhaust. On the outside, everything's looking pretty decent. I do have to do some body work in there, like I said, but for now I'm really happy with it. Everything's nice and bolted together. These two pieces are mated. Everything, all gap-wise, is looking pretty good. We are tight to the cab there, but we're tight to the cab on the other side. It doesn't hit. I'm going to pull off that tape later. Again, fit and finish on this truck. It's a patina truck, but I want things to look like, you know, I gave a crap, really. And that's what I'm doing. So running boards on, fenders on. Everything's cool there, and so we can get ready to get this thing off to the exhaust. I just have to throw the wheel on. However, I'm using the wheel to film the next video. So this video is going to end with this truck in the air, and the next video is going to pick up hopefully either on the way to getting my exhaust done or on the way back. We'll see sort of how things work and when I end up getting this picked up and off to Mike at GT Customs to get the exhaust done. Thank you for bearing with me with the length of time it took to do this video. As I said, probably somewhere in the video, I ended up getting hurt halfway through on my bike. Had to take about a week or two off. My grinder broke, welder out of gas, caught a cold, whole bunch of nonsense that real professional YouTubers wouldn't complain about, but I am complaining about, and it's really what delayed the video. So thanks for watching this one. Give me a like and a subscribe. Definitely throw some comments down. I'd like to see what you would like to see coming up in future videos, especially because it is getting a little bit warmer outside now. But we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks again for watching this one. See you later.